Welcome to the Charon Files. The stories you are about to hear are testimonies from living witnesses of what moves beyond understanding, of what refuses to be explained. Each of them stood at the edge of what is known and looked into what lies beyond it. My name is Charon, Ferryman of the Dead, the one who waits at that edge. What follows is what they brought back. May they prepare you for your own future encounters. There are presences that walk among you, beings unseen by most, yet undeniably felt by some. They are the whispers in the periphery, the figures glimpsed only when the light shifts, the helpers and the tricksters whose existence defies your neat categories. Humans often dismiss what cannot be empirically verified, yet these encounters persist, a testament to a world far more populous than you perceive, where other intelligences move through your spaces, leaving indelible marks on the lives they touch. These are not mere legends, they are testimonies of a hidden world asserting itself, shaping the fates of those who stumble upon its veil. Jacob from a remote village in northern Alaska recounts the enduring presence of the Undeniably, the little people, and the Inukpak, or big person figures from his community's ancient legends.
I'm from a remote village in northern Alaska. I grew up with stories of old creatures and legends, but I've also seen some things. My village is roughly 250 miles northwest of Fairbanks, Alaska. It is situated in the mountains and surrounded by a national park, so there is already suspicion of supernatural entities there. Growing up, I was always told about the Inulagarak, Inu Thligar Uck, Irasenrat on my Yupik side, or the little people. These smaller humanoids are of smaller proportions, but they are strong, fast, very smart, and they even speak an old dialect of the language of the area they live in. At a distant point in time, we lived alongside them and hunted for and with them out on the Nuna, or tundra. But, as one family was visiting another, a human's dog ate the little one's child, and so began a grudge that some still hold today towards humans. There are stories of people being lured away from their homes, just to be tricked and left out in the middle of nowhere. There are also stories of them helping us humans in times of need. Like from my village, caribou were herded by a small, blurry thing towards a group of people, according to a story from the 60s to 70s, and there was a good harvest of animals that fall. There are also stories of the Inukpak, big person, sometimes called Bigfoot by people, even though they don't always look like an ape-like human. The old stories talk of giants that roamed the land in silence, or in anger. One story even tells of a cannibalistic one out west near Nome, or Kotzebue. Back home, they come around when the caribou do, like the Inulagarat, and will either be mischief or just watchful of humans. In my personal experiences, I've seen the little ones and the big ones. They both can resemble humans, or just a blur on the land. I believe they're part of another world, or dimension, and that's why they cannot always be seen. But hey, we may never know.
Jessica, in Savannah, Georgia, found herself vulnerable after childbirth, receiving comfort and aid from a nurse named Kelly, whom other hospital staff seemed unable to perceive.
In 2020, at the beginning of COVID, I had just given birth. At this time, I could only have one other person in the room with me my entire stay at the hospital. Of course, my baby's father was there. But like the third day, he left to clean up our house and get everything prepared for me and the baby. I had gotten sick and had a C-section, so I had to stay for about 4 to 5 days. Well, while he was away, a nurse named Kelly said she would be helping me throughout the day and spending time with me so I do not feel lonely while the baby's father is gone. I could not really hold my baby due to me being sick and the pain from the C-section, so my nurses would come in every time it was time to feed. I noticed when they came in, they would not acknowledge Kelly, and she would go to the farthest part of the room, and she would tell me, "I am just going to get out of the way." Now, she did tell me that she did not specialize in what they did, she was just for comfort. So I did not question anything. The entire day, she was so helpful and encouraging to me. I really believe I would have broken down if she was not in there with me. She was such a sweetheart. Well, after about 5 or 6 hours, she told me she had to leave, and that she would come visit me before her shift was over to see how I was doing. She hugged me and blew a kiss at my baby, and walked out of the room. Later that night, the baby's father came back, and he was very upset. He had told me some stuff happened with his mom, and that he was sorry he took so long. I was upset, but I told him a nurse named Kelly kept me company. As I am telling him about her, my nurse is changing my sheets and she is like, "Who is Kelly?" I explained and she said that nobody named Kelly was in my room or working that day. So I instantly thought about those women who would pretend to be nurses and kidnap children. But my nurse told me that I may be hallucinating, and she told my doctor. I talked to my doctor and he said the same thing. Well, a couple of hours later, a nurse that I did not recognize came in my room and said, "I know this might sound crazy, but everyone on the floor is talking about you seeing Kelly." I said yes, she was here with me for like 7 hours today, she helped out a lot. We were smiling and laughing while I was telling her about Kelly and how sweet and funny she was. Then she pulled up her phone and showed me pictures of her and Kelly that looked like to be maybe early 2000s. I was smiling, knowing that I was not hallucinating. Then she sat down and told me Kelly died over 10 years ago from domestic violence with her boyfriend. I was not too shocked because my entire life I have been dealing with paranormal. But I got chills because I never had an encounter this deep. Well, the lady gave me a hug and started crying, saying, "Now I know that she is okay." Since that day I have been wondering, why did Kelly come in my room and help me? I kind of wish I could see her again.
John, a long-distance hiker in Grouse Meadows, California, details an encounter in the wilderness that profoundly challenged his skepticism regarding unclassified entities.
I am a entire John Muir Trail twice in both directions. I have hiked many miles of the Pacific Crest Trail, as well as numerous random trips in my time in the outdoors. I have probably a year of collective time sleeping outside in the wilderness and have hiked over 2,000 miles collectively. I have only managed to encounter 2 bears, some coyotes. I have smelled a mountain lion and heard one chirping near me. I am not a big believer in cryptids and such, but I have a story that makes me question that. In 2022, I hiked the John Muir Trail in the Sierra Nevada in California. It is a long-distance hiking trail that spans 211 miles from Yosemite Valley to Mount Whitney and takes about a month to complete. The trail is remote and located in some of the most amazing untouched nature the country has to offer. I hiked the previous year in a traditional southbound direction, and in 2022 I hiked the trail northbound towards Yosemite with my wife and a female friend of ours. This story is on that 2022 trip. One day, about halfway through our trip, when the afternoon was getting ready to end, we decided to camp in a place called Grouse Meadows. The previous year I enjoyed fishing here, and the gentle river that curves back and forth through the meadow makes a nice place to swim and filter water. We started to make camp for the night, and I noticed a large buck about 10 yards from us staring at us. It then started approaching, and I started to yell at it just to get it away. It circled around us a bit and then left from us down the way we came in from. I decided I was going to go catch a few fish before the sun went down, and maybe we would have some fish tacos for the night. The girls agreed and said they would finish making camp. We split a 3-person tent so it was easy. As I went down toward the small river in the meadow, there was a large rock near where we were camping. It was about the size of a 2-car garage and about that tall as well. Large enough you couldn't see over it. When I passed it, I noticed a young man come walking around it in my direction. I was surprised because by this time most people are already getting camp ready, as it gets cold and dark fast in the Sierra. I was also a bit confused on where he had come from, as he was not on a trail. He was just walking straight through a meadow with a river running through it, away from any trail. As he got closer, I noticed he was only wearing a small day pack, blue running shorts, and a white t-shirt, all completely clean. That may not sound strange, but when you are multiple days away from any trailhead that leads out of the mountain, it sure is strange. I was kind of walking away from him toward the river, but it seemed like he was following me, so I stopped and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" He replied, "Hello," in a very plain monotone voice. He then said to me in the same voice, "What are you doing?" I replied, "Well, I am going fishing," laughing, as if it wasn't obvious. I had a rod and reel in my hand. He didn't laugh. As he kept following, he said, "What will you do with the fish?" I said, "If it's big enough and not pregnant, I'm going to eat it." At this point, I had stopped by a little beach on the side of the river, and he passed by me, and I felt relief. He seemed off to me. But then, just when he was about 20 on the beach and squatted down and watched me fish. Eventually, I pulled one in, and it was a good size, and I prepared to clean it, and just as I pulled the guts out of the fish, he said, "How does it taste?" And I looked over at him, waiting to hear a joke or something, and he was smiling. A terrible feeling came over me, like that hair on your neck type of feeling. I said, "Well, I have to clean it first, man, and then cook it, you know." I said it in a way that would have come off to normal people as "I am done talking to you, fuck off" type of way. I stuck my knife in the sand in front of me and didn't put it away. The man after a while said, "I'm hiking 30 miles today," and I said, "That's nice, man, have fun." And he just stood up and walked off into the meadow towards a tree line, not on or near any trail, and vanished into the woods. I went back to camp and didn't really say anything to the girls because I didn't want to scare them. The night came in, we ate and went to bed, and I mostly forgot about it. I woke up. I felt woken up. I noticed both girls sitting up, and my wife said, "There is something there." I was so tired, I just said, "No, there isn't. Go to bed, guys." I laid down, and so did the girls, and within seconds heard a very fast shuffling sound, and I sat up, and so did the girls. I said, "Oh yeah, there is definitely something there." I use a small foam sitting mat outside my inner tent in the vestibule for shoes at night and to sit on during the day, and I saw it moving and could feel it moving. Something was literally right outside my tent. I grabbed my headlamp and our bear spray, and with my heart exploding out of my chest, I zipped open the tent ready to battle whatever was there, and there was nothing. Not even a distant sound. It was dead silent, like ear-ringing silent. "Maybe a squirrel or something. Or that buck," I said. We laid down, and this ended up happening like 7 more times. Every time, nothing. Eventually, I started to actually pass out because of how exhausted I was, and I only really remember cursing at it as I fell to sleep. I woke up again, and I looked over, and both my wife and our friend were asleep. I heard the sound again, and I got ready my bear spray and worked up my courage. I zipped open the tent, and there he was, about 15 feet away. The same guy on all fours in an almost push-up-like position, staring directly at me with that same face. It was completely silent. Then he crawled backwards into the dark with a speed I can't explain. I woke up. I was so relieved it was a dream. In the morning, I told them I had dreamed there was something at the tent, and they looked at me like I was joking. Our friend said, "Yeah, there was. You didn't dream that." My heart sank. I said, "What about that guy?" And they said, "What guy?" They only remember seeing that guy down with me by the river, so he was real, even if it was just a dream that he visited the tent. They also recalled not understanding why they fell asleep so fast when something was outside, and that they felt like there was a blank in their memory before falling to sleep. We all agreed that there was a general feeling that was just off in that place. I don't really tell this story because it sounds fake and stupid to me when I say it to myself, but it is real. I will never sleep in that meadow again.
These accounts demonstrate a persistent truth, that other presences move through your world, sometimes offering solace, sometimes evoking profound uncertainty. The names of the witnesses have been changed to maintain anonymity. If what you have heard tonight mirrors something you have experienced, leave your story in a comment below, and we will include it in a future episode. Don't forget to subscribe. You wouldn't want to miss the next episode of the Charon Files.